Bum bum. All right, we're just testing to see if this thing's coming across. All right, there we are. We are live. Let me know if you can hear the sound. I'm going to switch over to my screen. Get us kind of set up for the wait. Oh. That was a crash. Okay, mic could be a bit louder, so... Oh, I see it. Yeah. It's like every day it comes in and it's different. Let's change the gain on that. Testing 1, 2, 3. Yeah, there we go. That is so weird. All right, I think that is borderline red. There we go. That should be a little bit better. I can be kind of close to it. This should work. Let me know if I start to clip though. Dun 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 dun. Bum 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 bum. Oh, I grabbed the wrong one. Let's get the one that one. The one with the least. All right, we're right there at 11. I don't know if I exported those or not. Do not think so. I don't like this one. I like this one. Yeah, that's a nice view. All right, we'll start the recording. Okay, we're just going through right now. This is from one view. This is what we did the last 2 days. So let's go ahead and loop that, start that over. We started with a mannequin and we posed the mannequin one day. Okay, that was day 1. Then day 2, we went in and we found the landmarks and we started to establish the structural items. I showed you how I find form, and then I put it all up in speed and went around the body trying to find all of the masses, right? And we did this, you can see, well, let's get out of that. Let's go into transform and split. Yeah. So we did this in a fragment, what we would call a fragment. This is just like just the torso. And the goal in working this torso is to try to find structure, all right? And structure and construction are the two really important words for us to be thinking through in this. Because what I'm seeing here is a constructive approach. What I'm building here is construction. I'm building the structure through construction. And this is what I want you to understand the most, out of all of this time that we have here together. So we're going to now kind of work forward a little bit more on this. Just make sure that you know that enrollment is open. We got you got 2 days, 2.5 days, and then it closes down. And you're getting the anatomy class and you're getting this 4-week live. So make sure that you sign up now so that you don't miss out on that. Life happens, a bunch of things happen. And we go from there. All right. So sorry, I was just reading a comment. Okay, so let's say get ourselves in here. I don't see any comments or needs there. Let's make sure we've got OBS open and we are recording. And we want to go from torso to arm today. Any questions about the work that we did yesterday? Go ahead and put it in chat. I'm going to keep my eyes open over there to see what we get. And then otherwise, we're going to dive in a little bit more into some of the anatomy. I'm going to start to make the bridge from anatomy to construction and structure, and then we're going to start to transition over to the arms, working this a little bit more, and then building that out into the arms themselves. But any questions? Put them in chat. I got this right over here. I'm going to look at and see if there's anything more I can do to kind of help you guys. And otherwise, let's get in. So I'm going to just kind of get myself familiar with this model again, and I'm using my brush. And my embed is set to 2, but it was set to 5. I'm going to set it to 3 now. And I want to just go through and, again, familiarize myself, right? So, for example, I see a plane break, I see a surface here, and I see a form there. Okay, are those lined up? Like this looks like I've got one form and another, and that looks, yeah, okay. I'm gonna check sizing and make sure that I've got, what I need implemented. And then we need to look at this piece. Do I have that? It looks like that piece is actually right there. And then I've got a smaller piece down here. And that's it. I'm just going to kind of go through and I'm going to try to match things. And at this point, it's important, in my view, not to get focused on accuracy too much. We do want accuracy. It is a big part of the conversation. But more importantly, what we really want to be thinking about is the accuracy of structure of we just want to think about placement of structural elements. I'll say it that way. We're not thinking about accuracy. We're thinking about placement of structural elements. And I'm hopefully going to identify the structural elements because they're anatomical elements for the most part. And then once we've identified the structural anatomical elements, then we go through and we start worrying about placement, and we start worrying about surface curvature and stuff like that. And I do have to give us a bit of a caveat here. If we were working in clay, we would do this slightly differently. We would focus on accuracy first to some extent. We would focus on accuracy of the contour. Our accuracy, in fact, would come from the contour because it's hard to move things around in clay, right? I'm gonna do a couple of quick strokes with the brush. I'm gonna spend 5 minutes. It would not take somebody in clay 5 minutes. It would take a lot more, depending on the surface quality and all of that stuff. So we're working digitally, and that gives us a freedom, and we're owning that freedom. Okay, that's what's really important. Own this freedom. And keep it blocky. I need that embed set higher, and I need that square alpha. Better. I'm just waking up. This is my coffee. I haven't seen the model for a little bit. I worked on it a little bit last night, but not a ton. Okay, and then that side, yeah, that's good. The structural element I'm working on right now, the trapezius. Trying to work my concavities. Little hit, that's probably the rhomboid. This is the rhomboid showing up. We're gonna look at that. I don't know if I did the rhomboid in the anatomy figure, but I'll look it up. Rib cage. I'm going to add a little contour, build a bridge for that contour. Hopefully it's in the right place. I'm going to start to get a little bit more specific. Really need to find that 8th rib right there. I'm liking that. I'm feeling good. Yeah, I'm feeling like I'm making a difference. Looking a little less slapdash. So let me look for comments and questions here in just 2 seconds. All right. Yeah. Better. All right. Philip, are you enrolled in the course, Philip? That's where you get the scan. But I'm going to post it a little bit before the class starts. Wakosen. We're going to sculpt directly in pose, my friend, because of the way we're doing measurements and massing. So we're going to sculpt directly in pose. Basically just like I did. Damn, cold coffee. Let's see. All right, that's all the questions. Something's wrong. What's wrong? Something is bothering me. I think it's this. Yeah, there's too much curvature there. That's better. Yeah, you see how simple that is? And then I just added a little bit more variety to the form, and it sits better to me. I don't know if I can get any more out of that. You guys see any problems? Is the head in the correct place? Let's cheat. Yeah, roughly. You know, if you count the chin, she'll drop a little bit. But otherwise, that is mostly lined up with the volume. It might tilt a little bit more to the side like that. But not that big. Since I made that change, though, let's make sure we keep that stroke in alignment. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Split screen 1, turn transparency off, and we're off to the races. Now, let's talk about anatomy, shall we? So inside of your ZBrush is a anatomy figure, and I had the good fortune of putting this anatomy figure in. I was no longer working at Pixelogic. I was kind of on my own. But I put this anatomy figure in a really long time ago. You'll see they use Ryan Kingslien right there. It's also in the iPad, and I think it's called Ryan K because they had a naming, long last name. This anatomy figure was done a super long time ago, and I've redone one for the course. But one of the great parts about this is that it has all of the muscles largely delineated by their name, right? So I'm gonna press Shift and turn all of them off. The skeleton I'm still embarrassed by, but whatever. Get over it, Ryan. Now let's talk about the back. I want to find, let's say, the rhomboid. Did I put a rhomboid in? Nope, I skipped the rhomboid. The rhomboid is in the new one, but a rhomboid is basically a muscle that goes like this. It goes to T1 and down to T5. Is that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Yeah, T5. Goes to the spinous process of T5, and it goes up to C1. There's two parts. There's a minor, and then there is a major that operates like this. That little slip of muscle is something that you will actually see in our guy. Let's find him real quick and turn that off. So if we were to kind of go in and start to figure out, where all of this anatomy is, I like to just draw on the model itself. And I use Pen A brush. I reduce the focal shift to 20. That generally makes a big difference. But you'll see the medial border of the scapula. That's pretty low. Let's divide this once. I'm going to divide this a few times, guys. There we go. That's the medial border of the scapula. The medial border of the scapula is going to kind of come up a little bit. We've got the spine of the scapula, which is going to come down. Creates a nice little triangular base right there. And then the top has this little pyramidal form that'll come. And then this will go down, and it's about right there. And we'll leave it right there. That's the medial border. You can also see it here. Da-da. About right there. And then, of course, it comes up here with a little triangular shape. And again, remember, I'm drawing the medial border. So the medial border is bop, and it's got that little triangle down. And then you got a plane change as you get into what's called the lower angle. We're going to create a nice little triangle right there, and then we have that upper triangle. Okay, so it's going to be the spine of the scapula. Spine of the scapula comes up, and at the end of the spine of the scapula is what they call the acromial process. And you can see that. Let's go ahead and get our anatomy figure. We can say right like that. The acromial process is going to be right on the other side of the clavicle. So make sure you know where the clavicle is, because that's going to define where this is, okay? Same over here. Make sure you know where that clavicle is. It'll be the biggest protruding point for the most part. And then the spine of the acromial process to the spine of the scapula. Make sense? We're going to take the clavicle, and this is what we do inside the class. Okay, and now so from this, let's go ahead and in our anatomy figure, let's go ahead and locate the muscles of the shoulder girdle. So we want to find the teres major. We want to find the teres minor. Okay, we also want to find the infraspinatus. Okay, and then we also, I don't think I included the supraspinatus in this one. So maybe this is enough. Yeah. The next muscle for us to indicate would be the trapezius. But the trapezius is going to overlap all of that. Oh, let's make sure perspective is on. So we don't want the trapezius on just yet, if you don't mind. So let's just say, look at it from that view. And see if we can't identify some of these elements. So I'm going to say, identify this lower part right here. This is going to be the teres major. And this is actually not hard to identify because there's a form moving here and there's a form moving upwards. And if you can locate those two, then you actually get one of the most important blending moments, right? So let's go ahead and let's drop this over here and look at our anatomy figure. And we will, let's say, find the triceps. There you go. What I want you to notice is how, from this view, you've got the teres major. That's the teres major. You've got the teres minor. And this tricep goes right in between them. And that is actually what you're seeing happening over here. You're seeing the teres major coming down. The teres minor goes over the top. And then there's a form. Do you guys see it? Do you see how there's a form right there? That form is going right in between. So what we do is we look for the V shape. And that V shape, that's the tricept. And of course, all of this goes to hell in a handbasket once you put the deltoid on top of that, right? So if we come in and we put the deltoid, you can see the deltoid confuses all of that. It obfuscates. But this guy's moving forward. So one of the most important things that happens is that that deltoid kind of stretches and you are actually able to see how the tricept connects. So let's say, for example, let's turn this off and the minor. The tricept comes in and it inserts in just below what's called the glenoid cavity. I tell you, this skeleton's going to drive me nuts. Let's divide it. There we go. Okay, all of these things need to be divided once. That's better. Okay, so see how that tricep comes in, and it inserts right there. That insertion, it's there, it's present, it's never going to change. That's where it inserts. So when we know that, that also helps us go in and say, all right, well, so the acromion process, that means the glenoid cavity is probably right here, and that means that below that, that's going to be my tricept coming in. And this helps us chart the course of the scapula itself, which I'm now thinking of enlarging. I got to figure out how to enlarge that now. This is kind of a common problem. The scapula actually, I think the scapula is going to be even larger than I've indicated right there. But let's go ahead and get our teres major and minor. And the infraspinatus. Okay, perfecto. I don't know how long that is, so let me do a simple measurement. I'm just going to cut across and then cut across. Try to keep them roughly parallel. You know, I think that's as far as I get. This should actually be serratus anterior. Yeah, and I think this still works. I can still grab from there. Okay, let me check questions. Wakosen, if you're talking about the 4-week class, I want you to do exactly what I'm doing, because this is not interpretive dance. This is foundational figure sculpting. Rika, just curious, is there any particular reason for the way sculpting the figure? I mean, keeping the scan and adjusting our sculpture. It's so interesting. It's I'm intrigued by this because I learned from sculpting the figure, and that it's foundation, right? Whether you were a painter or whatever it was, figure sculpting was something that gave you power. And I've seen, especially in digital world, I've seen this question kind of come up, which really speaks to, I think, one of the big deficits that digital sculpting and digital arts have, which is their disconnect from reality. And the more disconnected you are from reality, the less power you have to make choices, believable choices. So the reason why we have a scan on one side and we're sculpting the other side is not because we don't have imagination. It's not because, we're losers and we have to copy. If that's the case, then literally the best artwork on the, everything in the Uffizi, everything in the Louvre, Like, it's basically the gallery of losers, because when we are creating art, you're working with reality, right? And so the goal of figure sculpting here is that you get power. It's as simple as that. You gain power. You level up. And so we are working from, in this particular case, we're working from an academic sculpture. And the reason why I want you to work from an academic sculpture, as opposed to me just going and buying a scan, is that this artist has gone through and thought about things, and they've codified things. And so now they have a shorthand language that we get to learn, to see the decisions they made, and we get to, and it helps us make our decisions. And honestly, there's no better way to get yourself power, right? So I know that there's figure sculpting classes out there where you work from reference and you kind of pull stuff together. But and I've taught those as well. But honestly, don't you feel like you're just pulling this stuff out of your ass and like you're not quite sure of it, right? And why pull it out your ass? Like, why not work from reference, build up a library of decision making, and then you're actually making decisions. You're not just guessing and hoping, which is it's the bane of my existence as a educational designer, is hoping and wishing. I like a curriculum that removes hope and wish as much as possible and gives you as clean of a pathway forward. I mean, of course, I could just create a class where I just go and sculpt and like you have to figure out what I did. I have to explain it, but most of what I do, I don't really fully understand, because at this point now I've forgotten some of the lessons you have to learn. I always struggle with teachers who do that. It could be because of my brain. I don't have a normal brain. I'm neurodivergent at a minimum, likely on the spectrum. So my brain operates a certain way. It needs a certain level of precision. So if you're okay just pulling things out your ass and trying to figure this and that out, then, move forward, go, like, run with it. If you're like me, I like a lot more control and precision. So I am building this live class to give you power so that you can make better decisions. And we do that by using great reference. And I'll leave you with this before we go back to the screen. Garbage in, garbage out, right? It's an input-output system. If you're inputting just random things you're thinking about, you're going to get random things you thought about. If you bring in solid information, research, it's, a lot of skill, you're going to pull that out of your system, right? Garbage in, garbage out. You don't want that. I don't want that for you. All right. Okay, let's get back to this. Okay, I got the mic right in front of me. It's like driving me nuts. Yeah, let's unpack this a little bit. So, there you go. That's it right there. This right here at this juncture, this is a tendon that for our purposes, we're going to just link the latissimus dorsi and the teres major. What really happens is, if I remember correctly, is that the the latissimus dorsi starts to overlap it a little bit. So we're going to just have that overlap a little bit right there. And let me get rid of some of this random stuff I put there. Well, not random, but you know what I mean. The teres major is going to drop below the latissimus dorsi, so it creates this kind of extra volume there, but the latissimus dorsi is going to come around, and I think it's right there. Yeah, I feel like it's right. It's going to come in, and can I say it's going to connect right there? Yeah. I feel comfortable with that. Okay. So that's my teres major. The teres minor is not a muscle you're going to see. And mostly what's going to sit on top of this is going to be the deltoid. So that's going to be the long head of the tricep. Right there. So I'm going to just pull that straight across, and I'm going to say that is largely deltoid. And the deltoid, as you may or may not know, it has multiple portions. So there is a scapula portion. Okay, there's a acromial portion. And then there's a clavicular portion. The clavicular and the scapula, they both connect kind of in the mid body of the acromial. The acromial, we'll say, takes its volume all the way down to its insertion. The clavicular inserts a little higher. The scapula does the same, but it's being pulled forward here, so we have a slight change in the way that that's operating. Okay. So then this is going to become the infraspinatus and the teres major. So I'll do a little bit right there to indicate it. All right, now before I go further, I love to play with these guys. So let's color this, yeah? And why don't we, let's just get rid of the lat entirely from this conversation and just talk about the teres major, right? And this is a big part, this is one of the really important lessons that I do in the class I have you do, is, you know, go in here and see if you can't kind of create something that looks cool. Let me drop the value down. There we go. This takes a moment, so I'm not going to bore you guys with a ton of this, but I am going to get a little bit of it here for you guys, so that, you know, it'll hopefully encourage you to go in and try to create something kind of fun, right? Try to figure out. Let's switch this up here a bit. Let me fix this sculpt 1 second. There we go. Okay, back to the wrong brush. Okay, long head of the tricep. Just gonna make a move like that. Okay, and then let's get a little crazy with it and adjust the opacity. And I like to go in and add a little bit of shading. And this kind of shading, this is like this is what you would do if you're doing airbrush. This is just fake shading. But it adds a lot of It adds some cool. Bern Hogarth, he does a lot of this fake shading as well. All right, there you go. So this is me just going in there and trying to figure out, you know, some cool ways to identify anatomy. And this is something that we do in the class. I don't know if how much of that we're going to do in the 4-week. I think it is essential to do, so it'll probably be an exercise I ask you guys to do. Hold on, my camera is on the fritz. There we go. It'll be some okay, let's show here. It'll be something I ask you guys to do based on the anatomy that you also get, where I will definitely ask you to draw the anatomy as you see on this guy. In fact, as I'm thinking about it, I'm getting even more excited about that being like day 1. Draw the anatomy on this, and let's figure that out. That to me sounds like a ridiculous amount of fun. So with that done and said, I'm going to put this here, and I'm going to start to apply that, you know, to my figure over here. And so now I'm not using, well, you know what? We can just use split. I think split's a fine tool. So let's go and get, there's the volume. What muscle is this? What it specifically is the muscle I'm working on right now? Let's go in mask lasso. Mask lasso. So I'm going to go here and just draw that clavicular. There we go. It's going to give me more control. Power. Voila. All right, so I've started to sort that out, right? So let's go back. Excuse me. This is what it looked like when I was just a wee little lad. That's what it looks like when I was just messing around on a structural level, not, you know, on a big level. I was doing big moves. Now I'm going in and I'm starting to apply the anatomy. And can you see the difference? What do you think? Rick is asking, how far will the scapula rotate around the ribs? And of course, if you get kinesiology, they'll talk about all of that, and I think these are important things to kind of to comprehend as you go forward, right? But it's a little bit more involved for me to talk about than just right now, because it also depends on the angle of the arm, right? And then the scapula itself is dictated largely by whatever angle the clavicle is. The clavicle is the determining factor there. And then the next thing is where the arms go, how far up they are. So this is a lot. Okay. All right, so let's go back. And we're putting more of the anatomy in. So I know that this is going to be, it's about right there, yeah? Yeah, that's the infraspinatus. And let's go ahead and mask. Yeah, there you go. Masking, by the way, is really, it's more powerful than you might have thought. Okay. Then we can just, if we want to just obliterate that boundary between them, you just see that? I have a boundary between them because I masked, and then I just, this is the equivalent in the practical world where, you know, you either, if you're in terracotta, you put water and you brush that. If you're in oil-based clay, you use a torch and you mask, you melt it. Sorry, lost my brain there. And let's mask. There. Sometimes when I sculpt, I lose language. It's like they're mutually exclusive tools. I have a choice. Do I sculpt or do I talk? Okay. Now, some of what I'm doing here as well, I'm going to show you in just a second. Some of what I'm doing here, I also do with the rake brush. The rake brush, it tends to excite people, but it also tends to scare people. So I'm just showing you this with this brush first, because it's a continuation of what we did. Uh-oh, it's a geometry problem. Always fix those geometry problems. They become huge problems later. I'm going to turn off the poly paint on that guy real quick. Is that accurate? Yeah, I think that's largely accurate. Okay. Hopefully we get to arms today, guys. Often when I teach, the material starts to dictate its own direction. That might be somebody else's way of saying occasionally I go on tangents. But I want to show you the thinking process for so much of what we do that I'll occasionally have to just mitigate or make changes to the goals. All right, I'm getting to an end point with this. And so are you seeing how I sculpt down a form and across the form? I want to pause for a second and see if that makes sense to you guys, because it's a foundational lesson. You create a contour and then you bridge that contour to the surrounding surfaces. And in order to kind of define the boundaries, you can also use masks, which you saw me do. So if there's a particular form, like I was working on the deltoid in the back, I masked off the other section, you know, so I could kind of build that bridge and not have it affect the other parts. That isolation is an important part of it. I'm going to switch now, and I'm going to go into a slightly different mode in other places in the body. So I'm not going to focus too much more on this because I've built this up and I've got a reasonable representation. I'll probably go in. I feel like there's some things that are off, but the methodology and the thinking process are intact. Actually, I see a problem right now. Yeah, I see a problem right now that we'll probably go in and address. And maybe I'll use the rake brush. But the thinking process is the first thing I want you guys to know. You know, how I build the main contour and build the bridge. Down the form, across the form. Okay, let me know though in the comments. I really want to know if that part is making sense. All right, I have my rake brush active. I have it set to a hotkey. This is my rake brush, my new rake brush. I did build the rake brush inside of ZBrush. Clay tubes I built after Ofer told me how to do it. The rake brush that is in ZBrush sucks because the settings changed. And so don't use this one. Make sure you download mine. And mine it's like a real rake brush. It actually kind of exists and creates a nice contour within it. All right, so part of the problem is that I have the microphone right in my face, and it's right over this area where I made the mistake. So I get to blame the microphone. When I use the rake brush, one of the things that's really hard to explain to people is that I will press Alt and carve in, and then in the very same exact brush stroke, I'll actually stop pressing Alt and it'll build back up. Do you see how that operated? I carved in and now I've built it all back up. And I do that frequently, you know, so it'll be like so I've done that like 6 times. Very hard for you on in the outside world to be able to know when I'm doing that. So I apologize, but there's no way around that. I could use like a button that says Alt and it displays it on the screen, but I guarantee you it would still be confusing because I do that so much that you'd literally be looking at the screen the whole time. Actually, there's so much that we can do about the form here. This is the teres major getting revealed and then giving way to the lat. It's a slightly different form that gets built up there. One of the things I really like about the rake brush 2, I don't know if you can see it. Let's zoom in. I'm going to divide this model, actually. There we go. It's really good for establishing a plane. Do you see that plane? Let's undo that. See how it was round? Now I got a plane. That is awesome. And it's easier to do that with this than it is to do with clay tubes. So here, just like the other one, this becomes like a record of my observation, right? And as you get better, you'll observe more. But in the beginning, there's going to be mistakes and, all that stuff where you might go over the surface multiple times as you try to figure out how to get it to represent. But it's just such a great tool for helping you build some of these smaller aspects. All right, now another thing to consider is the standard brush. So you can see there's like a really strong plane right there in the trapezius, and I have found the only real way you can get that is with the standard brush. So I'll build it in, like you see I carved in the form, and then I go and I add volume around that as well, just to create the lip. And so now, there you go. Let's go back. I don't have the lip. Now I built the lip. And of course, I'm not going to let it just ride like that. I'm going to carve that. But now I can. Mm-hmm. See how good this is at just flattening? Do you see how there's a flattening right there in that surface? Cut that out a little bit. You see I've identified these forms. Now I'm going to define their contour, bridge them with other forms. All right, everybody asks, why do you use the rake brush? And I use the rake brush for the exact same reason traditional artists use it. It integrates form like nothing else. Plus the rake brush in digital sculpting, I think I mentioned this, it builds form. That's a huge plus. Because the rake in the real world don't do that. Now we got to flatten some things. You see how it's overly... But that has a slightly different characteristic. These are the things that we use a reference for. This is the reason we study life anatomy and why it's important to do life drawing. And it's because, you get these ideas inside your head, and, those ideas become a feedback loop of, garbage in, garbage out. And in 6 months, you're like, I'm at a plateau. I don't understand. And the reason is because, one, you're right. You don't understand. You are missing something. The problem is often when we hit a plateau, we think what we're missing is talent. And talent is an irrelevant part of the equation. I mean, it's irrelevant. I can't stress that enough. There are more than enough examples of artists whose siblings were more talented than them, but didn't put the work in. And, one of them decided to put the work in, and they're the one that excelled. So, talent, smallant, there's no magical genies hanging around in your DNA going, poof, you're an artist. No, not happening, right? Artists are largely people who have genetic capacities or thinking processes, and they manifest according to the times and your exposure. I could have been a data scientist, raise me 10 years later, and coding would have been, it would have been inescapable. But I was around with Commodore, so you had to have like a specific focus if coding was the thing. I was into arts. And so sculpture became my thing, because the feel of it, and I like solving these visual spatial problems. Not because of magical midichlorians. Messy as hell though, right? I'm going to show you a trick here in a second. Besides, midichlorians didn't work out well for the force. Or for the quality of all the spin-offs either, by the way. Almost ready to show you the trick. I'm going to go into my clay brush. I'm going to go my embed. So for those of you who don't know, embed is in depth. I'm going to set my embed to 1. Okay. When you set your depth embed to 1, it becomes an amazing flatten brush. Not when you just sculpt on the surface, but when you press Alt, like I'm doing right now. But, I can also use it to build, because the embed is set at 1, so it is building. But mostly what it's doing right now is flattening. All right, so you can see we're getting a little bit further along here, right? You can do this as well up here. I'm gonna use it right here just to set my stage for the rib that I want to indicate. And it might look like I'm going over the surface multiple times. And that's, of course, because I am. So if you're expecting not to do this extra little bit of work, then remember that there are jobs for prompt artists out there. And you can always do that job. But if you're willing to do the work, touch the surface multiple times, then sculpting might be for you. All right, there we go. Let's go in now, and this whole area has been left largely vague. And so that's kind of the area I want to start to evaluate and think about here in a moment, but I should save this project. Dias, what's the polygon count? I just work somewhere around 2 to 4 million. But it really becomes what your system handles and what gives you a surface quality that you like. And for something like this, 3 million is enough. Hey, Eric. Thanks. Appreciate it. Malcolm, yeah, I use my rake brush in the iPad. I think they have a little bit of a clunky system. I keep getting logged out, and I don't know if it kept it or not. I'm 50-50 on the iPad, but I mean, that's literally because I don't know if you guys can see. Let's look at the camera. But you see the edge right here. It's because I'm used to dealing with a 36-inch iPad. I mean, I have a 36-inch iPad here in the Cintiq, and this is the old Cintiq. They don't make them anymore this size. So when I'm down on this little tiny 19-inch thing, like, it's just a pain in my ass. It's not fun for me. But again, I'm older. I helped build the program, so like everything is exactly where I'm comfortable with it. But the iPad will take the brush. Hey, Danny, how are you? Okay. All right. I'm scared. I mean, I think we've done okay. I think we've got some volumes that are off. We definitely got a lot of stuff going on. I think right here I'm feeling it. Yeah, I'm definitely feeling it. In terms of the coloring, let me show you this real quick. Look in this little box. All right, they're both representing the same anatomical points, the same structure. But what you want to notice is just like there's a light here, and then it gradiates to dark. But you see over in mine, there's a light here, and it really indicates, all right, there's a lot of curvature in here. So this is one of the areas where color becomes important. And color is something sculptors have been doing forever. You put the light in a certain way where you can see form, and you're like, all right, yeah, that's turning faster or turning slower. That's flatter or more convex. Rodin, all of those guys, they would put their model up against a window and slowly turn it to see when there might be a surface that's just too bumped. So we can see here, yeah. I am going to, you can also see it when you look at it from this view too. You can see quite clearly, like, that's pretty flat. That's round. I mean, I'm looking at it and I can say, all right, well, it looks like there's a high point here, and then everything just starts to really drop down. Whereas that's not what's happening here. My high point is actually right there in the mid, and then all the form is doing this. So and you can even see it here in the back. This is a great view for us to get to. Up. And then across. And then that plane needs to largely continue down. Yeah. Bop. Okay, I feel like there's going to be another high. We haven't built that yet, though. This one I feel like I'm okay with. But you can see here the color is darker. And then I've got a light color here. So let's say A is dark, B is light. So what that tells me is that my B isn't, I don't have that turning to the surface. So if I focus just on that B for a second, I might come in, and you see how I bring it more towards the, See how that got lighter? Undo. That's we use coloring to help us determine, okay, well, you know, look, what was happening was that form was turning away. So in my original form, it was turning that way. But in the sculpt, it's actually turning this way. Color becomes a really important part of our work in discovering the problem of form. Yeah, I haven't worked all the... Oh, look at that. Giant bulbous muscles. I love it. His muscles have muscles. Okay, now let's get back to this problem. Which is where we basically flatten this. There. Didn't take much. A couple of strokes. Go back, go back. Before, rounded. After, I've dropped it down. I may want to grab the, like that, and I think I'm okay. Yeah, I feel comfortable about that. Can't emphasize enough how important this view is. One of the problems with building the anatomy. Now, I'm going to just go over that so I can just get a little bit more life to it. Because that flattening tends to kill everything. This gives me a chance to just give it a little bit more love. There we go. All right, not too shabby. Now the scary part. Should be doing the extension. The extension's so much easier. This compression sucks. And for the sake of argument, I am going to get rid of the coloring here because it's distracting me. Okay, questions? Sammy, I am unlikely to delete this. I might. I'm not making promises. If I do something really stupid or if there's like financial information that gets shown in there, I just delete it as opposed to having to edit it. Got to figure out this form right there. There's something here. Okay, so this form comes up. And then it's coming around and then down. I don't know if this makes sense, but I'm seeing a line down and a line up, and so I'm trying to treat this as its own form. Rotate your model often when you're doing this kind of stuff. I think that, no, it's pretty accurate. I think. I'm gonna have to look at it from here. There we go. It slopes quite quickly downwards, so I'm building planes right now. May not be apparent, but that's what I'm doing. What are you guys learning? What are you picking up? Anybody found something valuable today that they want to share? I don't think we're going to get to the arms, by the way. I think this is too important. Okay, let's say clay in bed. I'm going to switch my alpha. Actually, I'm just going to reset this brush. There we go. This is tricky. All right, I'm gonna switch my tactics. Not yet, Ryan. Don't switch yet. I gotta get this planar structure a little bit cleaner in the lead up. I'm going to use a standard brush to just cut across there. Easiest way to cut. Alright, I think I am ready. Alright, anybody put what they learned? Thomas is learning how to construct the volumes. Thank you. Okay. Why am I nervous? All right, let's start here. This is the equivalent of like laying down little pellets of clay. You can see him doing that in Florence. Anybody who's gone to the Florence Academy, you can see him putting down little pellets of clay. It's just one method. Let's get that arm out of the way. Let's get the other arm out of the way too. Moving that model around a lot. That should be the 6th rib right there. Okay, got lost. There we go. All right, I am not talking. I'm lost in my la la land, so sorry about that. But any questions? I see two forms there. Interesting. All right, that's a foundation. I see some problems. There we go. Okay, let's go through, and now that we've put some clay down there, let's start to make sense out of this. Yeah, there's a nice little form right there. The tiny bit of convexity. That's gonna go a little bit more to diagonal. Okay, this is not going to get the folds and the skin the way I want, which is okay. It's to be expected. We're going to do that with another tool in a second, in a minute, in a couple of minutes. That's this right here is a job for the standard brush. Okay, we carve in with it, and then we kind of build out from there. There's a little form there I didn't indicate that I need to. I'm going to just obfuscate the difference there. We'll put that in a second. And let me get that wall. Push that in a little bit. I'm blurring my eyes as I look at this, by the way. I don't know if that's something you guys do or not. but it's a powerful way of starting to kind of see the form of the form. And if you understood that, then you just leveled up. Trying to see the form of the form. Well, that's what I'm looking at, is the form, damn it. Yes, but are you looking at the right form? Or are you looking at the red dress? Now you've got Star Wars references, you've got Matrix references. I'm doing my best here, guys. Are you not entertained? Certainly not with that last gladiator. That one, I dare say, sucked. I can't quite comprehend. It sucked so bad I was just like surprised. All right, there. Does that make sense? This use of coloring and building and so I've moved to another level. That's why I wanted to pause for a second. I want to pause because I need to stretch, man. Damn. And let me save this. I think I'm at 4,000 undos. Let me save this while I've got my face on camera so that you don't see it actually crash. So the key thing for me here for you guys to see, you've seen me construct big forms, right? You saw me with the masses where we started with the maquette. Then you saw me go in and start to define, say, an arm and start to find, the certain contours, right? And I don't like to say that there's like contours that really matter. Of course there are, but I want you guys to think about sculpting as a form of discovery, right? And so I have to approach it as discovery. If I approach it otherwise and it becomes mechanical, boring, and I stop, I can't do it. It's discovery, and you need tools that help you discover, right? And you've seen my toolbox actually so far. You've seen most of my toolbox as we go through and do this. This last little part was really important, and we're going to look at it here and again, of going in and adding these little pellets of clay, so to speak, and then going in with the rake brush and just kind of like sweeping them into each other. And as you sweep them into each other, you both define form and you lose form. It's always that. You're always defining and losing. And then you just get to this balance that kind of works. Or you just go to the next stage where you bring in the next tool, the next step in the process. So if you're in clay, you melt it, and then you'd go back in with another tool where you draw in and you start to define edges a little bit more. Technically, that is the next stage, is that I go in and define edges a little bit more. I'm actually likely to leave it as it is right now, because I want you guys to be thinking structure. And I'm going to switch the screen in a second. But I'm going to recommend you guys look up one specific artist. And this artist has been doing this since I was studying. I remember seeing Dan way back in the day when I was in the Pennsylvania Academy, and I was just like, wow, this guy's amazing. He creates form, not just, rendering the turn, right? And that's important because rendering the turn is a way. It's an academic way. When you see how Dan Thompson creates form, you'll see a little bit more of how I create form, a little bit more construction. Obviously at a masterful level. I'm still getting his coffee. so to speak. You'll see it in just 1 second. But any questions, shout them out. We're at about an hour and a half, so I actually want to wrap it up. And at that point, and my wife is actually up here. So we were supposed to do arms today, but we didn't. We can do those tomorrow. I think the lesson that we've had is actually significantly important than me just jumping into arms. And it revolved around how you construct form. I don't know if you guys remember, but day one I talked about the hierarchy. And that's what this today was. Today was starting with that big block-in that we had, then starting to refine muscle groups, and then going down into smaller muscle groups, and starting to see if you can suggest form as much as explicitly define it. So this is the guy. I'm going to look at the questions here in a second. But this is the guy I want you guys to look up. Go friend him on... It's not friending. That tells you how old I am. Shit. Follow him on Instagram so that you can see it. He talks a lot about structure. And it's a way that I actually think about sculpting. Yeah, we need... Malcolm, we need Predator. I actually don't know any good Predator lines that aren't basically Terminator lines. So that's the next. I'll get some. Tomorrow I'll try to work some references in. Kushan, you just asked why I used the rake brush, so do me a favor and go back through this. Maybe to an hour and 10 minutes, but you'll see when I get into the rake brush, I explain it. And the simple answer is it integrates form. But the other answer is to actually see it all there, in a lot more detail. Lou, what references do you recommend for learning anatomy? So information is free today. So it's hard to reference to tell you what to get. Like you just Google artistic anatomy. You're going to get lots of great reference that people have been putting together, for a really long time. I'm a big fan of Robert. I love the way he kind of builds things and constructs things. Obviously, Paul Richer is the godfather of all of this. I'm a huge fan of Ray Bustos. He used to teach classes with me. And I think of Ray's a miracle. Then there's also Gottfried Bommes. Make sure you have Gottfried Bommes. In terms of volumes and whatnot, he's the GOAT. Can't really think of anyone else. And then if you really want to get into higher levels, then you generally want musculoskeletal. I'm totally screwing up that, but Google will correct me. You generally want this book. What? Do not tell me that is $7. Dude, somebody buy this. I paid a lot. Don't get the one with the head. It says Atlas of Anatomy, but it's the head. So don't get that. This book is this is the bomb. This is the one. And what the bejesus is going on? I paid $70 for this book. It's 560 pages, folks. And it's a $10? I can't imagine that. Something's wrong. Anyways. Oh, maybe there's a new edition. There's a new edition. All right, that's the one. So, oh yeah, look at that. So, come on. God, come a chameleon. There we go. Now we have a pop reference I was able to throw in. Come on, give me some reference. Some images, please. Human body proportions. Let's see if they changed. Oh, damn. They did. All right, well, I don't know if you need to spend $70 if they got one for $9, but this is the next level, high level stuff. Not the brush itself, but the icon when you're sculpting in the window. I do not know what you mean, little icon. And then anatomy for sculptors, then, you know, those are all great. Okay. Okay. Yeah. All right. So there we are. Okay. So let's take a look at this. Let's leave this at this level today. All right. I'm going to check and see how jacked up I am. What I do here is I'm just going to press and push in, and you can see I'm actually quite close on the surface in a lot of areas. There's like, let's just push some areas in, and then we will compare. This is actually quite normal. In fact, this model has, the reference actually has its own problems. But anyways, there, once I've pushed it all in, but notice, I mean, it's not that big of a deal. I don't see this as a big deal. I think that's all well within parameters for our exercise. And we have a lot more to do, you know. But I'm not going to do this side. I am going to consider that I have covered enough with torso with you guys, and I feel pretty strong that, you know, we've provided a good set of tools so that you can go through and watch this video a couple of times, and get something kind of out of that, and that it's going to help your sculpting be better and stronger. All right, and so next time we should definitely go into arms. There shouldn't be anything that stops us from doing arms or legs and moving that forward. And so again, we have another session tomorrow, same time, and then we have another session on Sunday, and then after that, enrollment closes. So if you guys want to be part of this course, enroll today at kingslien.art, and I will see you guys in the Discord and then in the live class on next weekend, basically next Saturday, August 2nd. All right. You're welcome, Lou. Okay, tell me. We're going to switch over to the screen in a second and do a little bit of work there. But tell me, what is the one thing that you picked up out of this? If you told me before, just rewrite it in the comments. What's the one thing that you think has made a difference out of this that you think is going to, you're going to be able to kind of carry forward? So, that done and said, head over to kingslien.art and go ahead and roll today. And I will see you guys in the class. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for taking the time. Thanks, Ashley. Thanks for being here. Thanks, Lou. Really appreciate it. Had a lot of fun today. Lots and lots of fun today. Actually, today was when I get into the nitty-gritty of following form, that's always my great pleasure. Okay. All right. There we go, guys. Have an amazing day. If you have questions, head over to the Discord, and I will see you in the course.